Ruba Al-Sweel is a writer and artist focused on media theory and networked communications. She produces text-based video works that reference and parody mass media by exaggerating certain aspects of contemporary society.
She is published in magazines and books and is the co-editor of Post, a biannual publication of arts, culture, and design, billed as an anti-manifesto. Her work has appeared in the Brooklyn Rail, Art, Asia Pacific, DoNotResearch, DAZED, Damn Magazine, among others.
Great. Thank you, Daniel, for that introduction. And it's actually coincidentally one of the colder winters in Dubai, so I'm not sure the heat theme sort of works here, but it's definitely kind of a symptom of some sort of ecology we found ourselves in. But thank you for having me, and I'm really honored to be part of the summit. And today I'll be kind of expanding on an article I wrote for Squad, where Gonzali Yelchinkaya and actually Henry Bruce Jones commissioned me to write recently. I'm not avoiding eye contact. I'm looking down because I have some notes here on a paper. So I guess as a sort of maybe framing, I wanted to start with a quote from Marek Pulix, who was actually also on this panel yesterday. And sorry, I realize that this sounds like an echo chamber, but he recently said in a lecture that he gave at Columbia University last December, "The future is not a destination. It's more of an infectious mutating disease with different incubation patterns and symptomologies. When we talk about the future as a thing, we talk about the more extreme tendencies of the present as symptoms or potentially fertile mutations." So I tried to apply this framework to think about the future of fashion, to sort of acknowledge these extreme mutations happening in real time, namely the changes in methodology, in context and ideology due to developments in technological and economic structures around fashion today. So I specifically am interested in my work in general at changes. So I look at changes in language that make us reconsider the very ontology of fashion. And by that, I mean kind of fashion moving away from being a commodity with seasonality and cadences that really centers sort of materiality and the body or corporeality, to more of a latent space, more of like a relational object that represents the learned characteristics of a set of data. So enter tag cloud fashion, and tag cloud fashion comes as a bastard child of big tech and a general kind of culture of transitoriness. And I described it in my essay as this thing that's malignantly growing on the side of global capital. So in less abstract terms, what I mean by tag cloud fashion is that jumble of words that appear disjointed and nonsensical that we're all very kind of accustomed to when shopping or just generally being online and kind of going through hashtags. So for example,
women's sexy distressed denim skirt with frayed edge, belt and pocket.
I pulled these straight from Timo and Shein to describe garments. And this one, you know, we've seen it, it feels tactile. It feels like it can only last as long as the 10-second iPhone timer it takes to shoot a picture of it and kind of leave it forever on the grid.
Women's camel print casual holiday comfy dress with round neck, drop shoulder sleeves and dual side pockets, summer. Gothic imitation feather fake collar vintage performance dress up one world show party stage Halloween costume accessories.
So apparently this one in particular has been purchased over 2,000 times on Temu, and it promises international free shipping straight from China in 4 days or less. But this kind of new syntactic arrangement, which has become sort of a hallmark of our online shopping experience, doesn't feel like quite a new phenomenon, even though it's very tempting to think so. In the essay, I argue that its historical roots can be traced to Roland Barthes' book, Système de la Mode, in which he developed a complex analytical framework for clarifying the signifying structures behind the representation, consumption, and circulation of meanings in the experience of fashion. So in the book's first chapter, he opens with a prologue, and it literally looks like it could have been lifted straight from a Shein sort of listing. So he quotes a French fashion magazine's description of a certain garment. And it says, a leather belt with a rose stuck to it, worn above the waist on a soft Shetland dress. He calls this written clothing versus image clothing. So he argues that fashion is not just the material, the literal fabric. It's a complex merging of systems of meaning. I know how we've become very accustomed to kind of learning in snackable diagram, So I put this little thing together to kind of explain what written clothing is versus image clothing. So the system of language, and image clothing derives obviously from a system of photography. The terms of the garment as a signifier, under image clothing, the terms of the garment is a signifier. It's numberable, and it's material and visible. The garment could be traced and underpinned by a network of data, namely time and date of creation, name and location of creator, the size and the source of the material, the technology employed in creation, as well as the commercial routes and logistics. A garment under written clothing is signified, and it's more immaterial, mutable, and qualitative. It could communicate things like relevance. So how and when is this item dredged up on our For You page? It could communicate favorability. So what feelings or attitudes is this garment kind of affirming or antagonizing? What kind of complex network of sub-communities and spaces does it belong to? And also it could communicate something like ethics. Is it morally good or bad? And do we even actually care about that? So I kind of put together, this comes as no surprise to anyone who's very online, but some examples of eerie messages that kind of allegedly arrived in Shein packages delivered to customers. Things like, help me, I have dental pain, or you're going to die in this suit. So to go back to Bart, he ultimately reveals that what he considers fashion is neither the real material garment nor the language that we've constructed for it, but the process of transmutation between the signifier and the signified. So it's what the merger of two systems of logic, image, and language kind of imbue on the garment. But what I found is that this instituting speech, this kind of merger, is not an innocent or kind of passive one. He says that the presence of words is not a passive medium that simply transmits the real clothes and change to its customers. It does something or reveals something at the very least. So today, text-to-image AI may lay in sharper relief what that very thing is, in that a well-prompted machine will quite literally generate an image of what is culturally relevant and, more importantly, an image in concert with the attitudes and ethics that guide and determine what is intelligible within our given historical period. So these models are trained on thousands of hours of recorded behavior, taking a dense history of collective input as its source material. They articulate a mood and give life to vibes that operate beneath a collective consciousness, defining a conceptual system in a given time and domain. So I've already said a lot. I'm going to step back and call in my co-conspirator, whose music and whole vibe is kind of a node and network of significations, the one and only Lana Del Rey.
Have you ever seen or heard something obnoxious generated from a machine? Something oddly empathetic or abrasive, perceptive or impolite? That uncanny encounter with an image of the unreflective is what I'm talking about.
So while machines train on our input to communicate in machine logic, so if machines contribute to social intelligence, it's not because they've learned how to think like us, rather because we've learned how to communicate with the machine. So for example, scrolling through AliExpress, again, a hybrid mutant of the twin accelerationist dogma of globalization and transitoriness, it's like taking turns with the machine in a formalized game of charades. So I entered the words caps, entering the words caps and or bicycles in the search bar will generate the same stringy balaclava sold for less than $1 and described as
Balaclava bicycle, cycling travel caps, dustproof, face cover, sun protection hat, windproof sports, with sunscreen mask.
So when I scroll down at the very bottom of the page, we see in real time an example of keyword stuffing, whereby seemingly desperate words are used to lure search engines into thinking the page has more relevance to any given search. So this very balaclava will also appear under winter mask soldier and tactile balaclava winter. So prompt logic and fashion are the base function of Dress to Impress, a multiplayer dress-up game on Roblox where users compete to create the best outfits based on thematic prompts in every round. Referred to as themes, they are words or phrases that describe a certain style. During each round, a theme is displayed at the top of the screen, and players have 5 minutes to make the most fashionable avatar in that style. So some themes include broad spheres of fashion, as you can see here. Broad spheres of fashion, as you can see here, while others are highly specific. The game does not describe what the theme is or how to dress in that way. So players are really required to make creative use of the items available to them. So in this instance, humans operate like machines, scrambling to render a relevant and meaningful image of themes like famous YouTuber, famous painter, avant-garde, ancient civilization. So out of curiosity, I enter into the search bar of AliExpress a Dress to Impress theme. Self-care Sunday. Obviously, I entered it. I never get the same results every time because you never visit or step into the same river twice. But among the wall of products, I'm presented with a baseball cap, a self-tanner, and a t-shirt described as easy Sunday morning t-shirt, funny breakfast, club clothing, vintage, Y2K aesthetic, short sleeve top, self-care, gift, self-love tee. Sorry, I'm kind of it's a mouthful. The products, albeit seemingly desperate, are culturally relevant and on theme. Any attempt at putting this into words just comes across as heavy-handed and stilted because it concretizes this kind of sensibility that is meant to remain ambient and free-floating. But I'll try. A baseball cap is helpful for a silly hot girl walk. Self-tanner signals a reprieve at the beach from the grind of work. And a slogan t-shirt is the most intuitive way of signaling meaning and association. I'm going to call in another sort of semiotic queen, Michel Foucault, and his archaeology of knowledge and the discourse on language. He argues that a grammatically correct sentence might lack discursive meaning, while a grammatically incorrect sentence might be discursively meaningful in the right context. So, for example, Office Siren is an aesthetic that started on TikTok, which borrows from corporate culture and luxury brands, is also a complete sentence, semantically meaningful in a specific context. So are these and AliExpress signaling a new era of written clothing? A quick look at the instituting language between users and their frequently used search terms, website admins and their spammy CEO keyword stuffing tactics, as well as the machine's process of deep learning, will notice very quickly another formalized, coherent, and discursively meaningful language emerging. We've been lamenting the ever-collapsing life cycles of trends enabled by meme culture and fast fashion. With each fleeting folly of a trend cycle, we shed old skin and emerge with a shopping cart of the current thing. Oftentimes, and even more so with massively multiplayer online role-playing games, that doesn't necessarily translate into Bart's real garment that arrives at our doorsteps fresh from the factories of the global south. Sorry. In gaming parlance, the term skin is a customization option for a player's in-game avatar. A graphic download that changes the appearance of characters. In Dress to Impress, the life cycle of a trend is 5 minutes. The prompt themes make it so that we see ourselves traversing histories of signification, both back in time, ancient civilization, and through to the future elegance. We're compressing theses of history into tag clouds. Is the 21st century subject assuming some sort of dark Angelus Novus, which views all of history as a single event? Is this sweeping storm of transitoriness and big tech trapping us in a circle of catastrophe, forcing us to continue our way forward, trudging through piles of threadbare clothing? It's really hard to tell, so I'll call Lana in again.
Common e-urban legend is that we are all going through mass psychosis, a condition of depersonalization, derealization, where the subject can see themselves from outside of their bodies and sense that things are not real. We keep seeing images of bodies refracted on screen, indexical references of our bodies, in-game avatars, icons, filters, bodies in ecstasy, in turmoil, and heaps under rubble or in packs at sold-out festivals, flattened, full bleed, skin on skin, filling up screen space. If in fact we are in a world where the signified, that immaterial, mutable, and qualitative thing that we all sense but can't explain can hold its own, then psychosis is less a disorder and more an especially postmodern cope.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Ruba. Does anyone have any questions for Ruba? No? Hopefully some are cooking. In the meantime, I will ask, I guess the first question is, well, it's personal in the sense of, in relation to kind of your understanding of like tag cloud fashion, I was wondering, like, has it changed how you either shop or kind of understand fashion, and I guess like also like in relation to your own style or the way that you, I guess like select or choose a kind of garment or whatever? I mean, like, yeah, is your sort of understanding of tag cloud fashion and how it works, has that kind of like altered how you understand, yeah, like your own style, your own sort of like selections, etc.?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, every time I kind of need something and try to use these hacks and these keywords to find it, I don't find it. So I don't know how kind of successful it's becoming in terms of relevance. But what's interesting is that the kind of conscious act of putting in a word doesn't necessarily always bring it up, but a few days later, what you're looking for kind of just is dreaded up on your timeline. So kind of speaks to the neural media kind of thematic that we're on here, is that maybe it's not the active conscious act of these words, it's other learned behavior by the machine. But it's actually been sort of a struggle to kind of, find exactly what I need when I need it.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking in a way, look, because your answer kind of obviously like touches on the kind of temporality of that. And I guess I was thinking, I remember hearing recently about, I guess like Shein and AliExpress, etc., as a kind of alternate model to Amazon. And they were saying that Amazon sort of have pushed this notion of like immediacy in the sense of sort of placing an order and getting that order as quickly as possible. And they have made obviously like a massive infrastructural and whatever like push towards that. But the argument, the counter argument was that kind of like, I guess like Shein and AliExpress, etc., offer a kind of alternate model to that, where maybe customers are happy to wait for a few days, on the condition that the price of that garment is much lower. So I was just thinking, in a way, it's kind of an interesting sort of what you were referring to there is a kind of like, yeah, like you put in a series of kind of prompts, and you get your return a couple of days later, or not like immediate. So I don't know, there's something maybe like the temporality of that is something maybe like quite interesting. I guess the other question I had was to do with how you see tag cloud fashion kind of more broadly kind of affecting our, I guess like bodies and our kind of relationship to kind of fashion as well, and sort of like how do you see that kind of playing out more broadly?
There's a lot of like research, obviously, and art on kind of Instagram fashion and digital fashion, and that influences the very production of the garment down to its longevity. So how it influences sort of our bodies as they come in contact with them is something that is always contested, because Timo is known for just all the toxic chemicals that they're made with, and just also the materials themselves. I heard that they ration the number of threads, so that's why a lot of the clothing doesn't actually really like cover you up or like shield you from like the cold or anything. So yeah, I think they definitely change the way we experience our bodies and the way we experience the material kind of world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that touches on Elizabeth's talk prior, just in terms of this like really almost like a tension between kind of these types of clothing for, I mean, you know, principally designed for the feed, and then these kind of clothes that maybe are required in order for us to be able to kind of physically kind of survive the climate. I guess also the other thing I was thinking about was, and I know he's kind of been used a lot recently, but I was thinking of Flusser's notion of like the technical image and the kind of technical imagination, and this kind of idea of, so like a technical image is understood as this kind of an image that principally is kind of, it operates almost like kind of a set of words in a way, or kind of, and a kind of technical imagination would be the ability for us to be able to understand that type of image. And so I guess like, do you have, I guess like, well, not hope's too strong a word, but I guess like, do you see us kind of collectively being able to develop this kind of notion of like a technical imagination if things that we're engaging with are operating much more like this technical image as a kind of like, yeah, in your case, like a series of kind of like tags or yeah, keywords or metadata.
Sorry, can you repeat what technical imagination is versus?
I mean, in a very, very broad sense, and I also like, I'm no like Flusser scholar by any
No,
means
same.
whatsoever. But I, you know, my understanding is that the notion of like a technical imagination is the sort of ability to be able to understand these technical images that are operating in a way that is not kind of customarily how we understand an image. So it's, I guess in a way, it's like a technical literacy in some way. And so I guess I was like curious in terms of like, do you have much hope that we collectively can develop this technical imagination if kind of clothing or fashion, whatever, is becoming more like a kind of technical image in that sense?
It's really interesting that you ask this question, because kind of understanding an image technically is what a lot of platforms are trying to achieve by increasingly kind of telling on creators that this is AI generated, or yeah, I don't know, or like, yeah, forcing people to kind of disclose how an image was produced, specifically if pertaining to AI. If we're gonna get more literate in terms of how the image is produced, I mean, I think it's just maybe it's an eventual sort of development in our kind of evolution, considering that all these machines are becoming more and more decentralized. So a lot of us are more experienced. More and more, I find myself kind of recognizing in real life like how that was created, or how, or I mean, kind of theorizing if this is created in a certain way. But yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're slightly running out over time. So I'd just like to say thanks very much, Ruba. It's an amazing talk, and yeah, thanks.